Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze how Tuchel exploited Guardiola's tactics in the first half by attacking through the channels in Chelsea's 1-0 Champions League triumph over Man City. So when we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Chelsea in a 3-4-2-1, and the big question here was Guardiola's system. It did look like a 4-3-3 that should have been a 4-1-5-0, and what we ended up seeing was that Kevin De Bruyne was operating up front, Mahrez and Sterling were occupying the touch lines, and then you had Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden looking to push forward with Gundogan ahead of the back four. So in today's video, we're going to solely focus on that opening half as it did play a key role in the overall tactical theme of the game. We're going to look at how City looked to press, how Chelsea looked to ensure that City couldn't create chances, and then the avenues in which Chelsea were able to get into high quality positions. A few weeks ago, we witnessed Guardiola adopt a very successful press that was more of a 5-1-4, and it witnessed the two strikers in Gabriel Jesus and Aguero stepping towards the center backs, with Aguero blocking off the passing lane into Azpilicueta, and then wide players in Ferran Torres and Raheem Sterling tucking into central positions to close down the midfield duo. However, here Guardiola did look to adopt a 5-man press, and what we ended up seeing was that De Bruyne was stepping out to Thiago Silva, Mahrez and Sterling were closing down Reece James and Rudiger, and then you would see Bernardo Silva and Foden looking to close down Jorginho. That does leave Gundogan free in that midfield zone, and we also ended up seeing Zinchenko pushing higher up the pitch to close down Azpilicueta. It ensures that Chelsea do have 3v3 at the back, and technically Gundogan's role here should be shifting laterally to deal with Mount, Havertz, or Werner dropping off deeper. Here you can see an effective example of City's pressing, with Azpilicueta closed down by Sterling, Foden and Zinchenko stepping towards Kanté and James, with Bernardo Silva pushing towards Jorginho, and when James clips the ball over Zinchenko, he's closed tightly by Ruben Diaz, and you have Gundogan shifting across for cover. Frankly, this should be a successful press for City, as you do have your 5 attacking players closing down Chelsea's back 5, and it ensures that the center backs and the midfield duo can't get on the ball, with Zinchenko also pushing forward as well. However, City did encounter several issues with their press, and it simply could have been modified. If Guardiola was persistent with his front 3 closing down Chelsea's back 3, if the ball was shifted out towards the wing backs, you could have Bernardo Silva stepping out to Chilwell and Gundogan stepping to Kanté, and vice versa, with Foden pushing to Azpilicueta, and then have Gundogan stepping towards Jorginho. That does ensure that City have 4v3 at the back, and even if they didn't want to have the shuttlers pushing out towards the wider areas, perhaps they could have Mahrez and Sterling just sitting off a bit deeper, allow Rudiger and James time to push forward with the ball, so that they can be close to Chilwell and Azpilicueta to ensure that the ball couldn't be played out to the wingbacks. However, the clear issue that Chelsea did pose towards City's backline was their overload down the left-hand side. With Mahrez and Sterling stepping towards the center backs, Sterling did receive cover from Zinchenko, who was stepping out towards Azpilicueta, but over on the left-hand side, Chilwell was able to create an overload with Mount ahead of Walker. The only way to overcome this is by having Bernardo Silva shifting over to Chilwell, have Gundogan dropping off towards Kanté, and then have Walker deal with Mount. If you want to swap those positions, you could have Bernardo Silva dropping off deeper to occupy the movement of Mount, and then have Walker pushing towards Chilwell out in the wider areas. Worst case scenario, if you have Bernardo Silva stepping towards Kanté and Gundogan is holding the center of the pitch, then you simply need Stones to stick tight towards Mount and Walker tracking the movement of Chilwell. Ultimately, this is the press that you want from City. You see Sterling stepping towards Azpilicueta on the ball, but blocking off the passing lane into James, with Foden stepping towards Jorginho, Gundogan applying pressure on Kanté, and Bernardo Silva holding his position towards Mason Mount, dropping off into his own half, and that ensures that Walker can hold this position to deal with Chilwell if the ball is switched out to him. That didn't happen, and whenever Chelsea were able to switch the ball out to Chilwell, whether it be Mendy or Thiago Silva, it left Walker in no man's land, and it allowed Chilwell to play a first-time ball in towards Mount. When Silva clips the ball out towards Chilwell, you could see Walker stepping towards the left back, but then he hesitates and looks to track back as Mason Mount is free and behind him. When Mount receives the ball, he's able to spin across Walker, and that's where you see Chilwell continuing his forward movement beyond Mahrez into the final third. But look at the Chelsea attackers. You have Havertz checking into the ball to pull out Diaz, and Werner looking to make a run across Zinchenko into space behind the City center backs. When Mount clips the ball over the City center backs into Werner, he does well to hold off Zinchenko, and that's where you see the center backs recover their positioning, but no one's picking up Mount as he's free in the left channel. When Mount receives the ball, he is closed down by Bernardo Silva, but look at how many City players are ball watching. Havertz's movement does take out Ruben Diaz and Stones, and that's where Conte looks to make a run into the back post unmarked. Chilwell ends up clipping the ball towards Conte, who does well to get in between Diaz and Sterling, but unfortunately for Tuchel, he guides his effort wide of the net. In the build-up to Chelsea's winner, it's Mendy clipping the ball over City's press into the path of Chilwell, and that's where you can see Walker stepping towards the left back, and once again it's Mount in space just behind Walker, and Stones not stepping forward to apply tight pressure. When Mount receives the ball, you could witness Walker and Stones dropping off and allowing him to step forward freely towards the halfway line, and that's where you see Werner making a run across Diaz to pull him towards the left channel, and with Gundogan also not stepping, that creates a large gap for Havertz, who's calling for the ball as he makes a run across Zinchenko. Mount does well to bypass the City backline for Havertz, and it places him in this position beyond Zinchenko that pulls out Ederson, and that's how Chelsea are able to kill off the game. Meanwhile, over on the right-hand side, what we ended up seeing was that whether it be James or Azpilicueta on the ball, Sterling and Zinchenko were being pulled towards it, and then you would see Havertz dropping off deeper to pull out Ruben Diaz, and Werner would make runs across Stones into the right channel to drag out the center back, and that also created openings for Chelsea to break into attacking areas. On the other hand, when we focus on Chelsea, they were very organized and disciplined out of possession. What we ended up witnessing from City was that their shape did shift to more of a 3-2-3, with Zinchenko moving into a central position, and then you had Sterling and Mahrez, like I said, occupying the touchline. So what you expect from Chelsea here is to have the front three closing down Ruben Diaz, Stones, and Walker. And then in that midfield zone, you have Conte and Jorginho protecting the back five, as Chilwell and James did a very good job sticking tight against Sterling and Mahrez and ensuring that those two weren't able to win the 1v1 duels. So what you should see in that midfield zone is Conte and Jorginho dealing with Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva, but there were times where they did vary their movement. For instance, Bernardo Silva was looking to receive the ball on the outside of Conte, and that's when you would see Rudiger stepping forward to close him down. Well, you could witness Werner blocking off the passing lane into Gundogan as he steps towards Stones, but look at Chelsea's shape. You have Jorginho and Conte dealing with the movement of Foden and De Bruyne in that midfield zone, and that's where you see Bernardo Silva and Zinchenko also free. But if they were to get the ball, Rudiger would step out to Bernardo, and Azpilicueta would push forward to deal with Zinchenko. There were times where Mason Mount was able to drop off deeper, and then he was able to deal with Mahrez, and then have Chilwell or Rudiger dealing with Bernardo Silva. Here you can see Mount dropping off deeper to close down Bernardo Silva, and look at the issue that City encounter. You have De Bruyne occupied by Thiago Silva and Rudiger, and then you have Jorginho dropping off deeper as well to provide cover with Chilwell tight on Mahrez, and Conte also tracking the movement of Foden. And then you could look at Chilwell closing down Mahrez into a deeper position, with Werner tracking Gundogan into Chelsea's third, and you could also see Thiago Silva tracking the movement of De Bruyne, and Rudiger shifting out wide to close down Bernardo Silva. Over on that left-hand side, you still have 4v2, and Azpilicueta beginning to shift centrally to close down Foden. And then over on the right-hand side, Phil Foden was tracked by Jorginho, so ultimately that does leave Zinchenko as the free man in that midfield zone. That's where you would see Azpilicueta stepping forward to close him down, and there were times where Havertz was dropped off in Chelsea's 5-4-1 and blocking off the passing lane into the midfielder. Here we can see an example of Stones on the ball, with Werner ahead of Gundogan, Havertz blocking off the passing lane in towards Zinchenko, and if the ball is shifted out to Ruben Diaz, Havertz could shift towards the center back with Jorginho stepping towards Zinchenko, and Azpilicueta picking up Kevin De Bruyne. Ultimately, there were times where De Bruyne tried to drop off into the midfield zone, and that's where you would see Azpilicueta stepping forward to close him down, and Jorginho would shift across to close down Zinchenko. Here we see another example of Chelsea's press with Havertz stepping towards Diaz, Werner tracking the movement of Gundogan, and then you could see De Bruyne dropping into his own half in search of the ball with Azpilicueta and Kanté tracking his movement, and you could see Jorginho stepping towards Zinchenko. That's where you see over on that left-hand side, Chelsea are well equipped because you could have Mount dropping off deeper to deal with Bernardo Silva, and then you have Rudiger near Foden and Chilwell near Mahrez. Kanté was able to deal with Phil Foden, and then Bernardo Silva would be closed down by Rudiger. What we ended up seeing was that because Walker wasn't looking to push forward, Chelsea were able to basically have 4v2 down the left-hand side, with Mount blocking off the passing lane in towards Bernardo, and then you could have Kanté or Rudiger looking to step towards him as Chilwell monitored Mahrez tightly. Whereas over on the right-hand side, with Foden occupied by Jorginho, you could have Azpilicueta stepping towards Zinchenko, but if he had to step towards De Bruyne, Havertz could drop off deeper to deal with Zinchenko in that zone. If Havertz wasn't dropping off deeper, like I said, then Kanté could shift across and Rudiger could step towards Bernardo because they have that 4v2 advantage on the left. And then when it comes to Gundogan, Chelsea were looking to step towards John Stones as they were inviting him to push forward with the ball. And that's where you would see Werner sitting on Gundogan to ensure that he couldn't dictate the tempo of the game from deeper positions. So as you can see, Tuchel won the tactical battle against Guardiola in the opening half as Chelsea shape stifled Manchester City's attack and they were able to maximize their left side overload to secure European glory. Hi everybody, thanks for watching and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.